In a world of challenges and uncertainties, hope shines as a beacon, guiding us through the dark times and showing us the way to brighter days ahead. But what exactly is hope? Where does it come from? And how does it shape our lives? I'm Annie Bennett, and I'd love you to join me on this journey as I explore the meaning of hope. I'll delve into philosophical perspectives, personal stories, and scientific insights to understand the power of this elusive emotion. So whether you're seeking inspiration, comfort, or simply a deeper understanding of the human spirit, let's embark on this exploration together and discover the extraordinary power of hope. Hello and welcome to the Chronicles of Hope podcast with me, Annie Bennett. Now, I cannot wait to get talking to today's guest. He is a speaker, a presenter, a model, a TV personality and author. Multi-layered, multi-talented. I first met him in January when I was recording Lisa Johnson's podcast, and then I saw him speak at Danny Wallace's Big Festoon, and I utterly blown away. And I'm just absolutely thrilled and delighted that he's agreed to come on to talk to us today. So it's my absolute pleasure to introduce the wonderful Jaxon Feeley. Good morning, Jaxon.
Hello, I'm here. I'm
He's here.
overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed by that introduction, but thank you very much.
Well, you deserve all the superlatives because I think you're just a phenomenal human being. And your story, I've heard your story a couple of times now, and it just blows me away every time.
Oh,
So for my listeners,
I feel sorry for you wanting to listen to it again.
not at all, because it's always a new nugget that comes out every time. Because it is, I mean, it is quite an incredible story, and people that don't know you are going to be amazed by what they are about to hear. So would you mind, for my listeners, introducing yourself, saying who you are, and telling us some of your story, because it's quite phenomenal.
Yeah, of course. Well, you introduced me, so that's all the stuff that I'm doing right now. But about 4 years ago now, while serving as a prison officer in the male establishment, I began transitioning from female to male. And did so while sort of staying in that environment and taking the prisoners and the prison and everyone around me on that journey of transitioning with me, and tried to show the power of vulnerability and the power of having to do the hard things and the things that scare you the most to really change your life if you want to, and make that possible. And the impact that I found that it had on prisoners was unbelievable, which then obviously inspired me to try and do that on a bigger scale. So in simple terms, that is what I've done. And so now I'm living as Jax and becoming more Jax every day and trying to figure out what life looks like now.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's just incredible. I mean, I've heard you speak of your story. I mean, you were in the military, weren't you, before
Yeah.
that? And there were all sorts of, I mean, it's quite a long story. I won't
Yeah,
ask
yeah.
you to tell all of it, but you
Right.
knew all the way along, didn't you, that something wasn't right, and you weren't the person that you were meant to be, really.
Yeah, like you would have heard me say at the Big Festoon, I always get asked, did you always know that you
Mm,
needed to transition? And that there's kind of two answers to the question, because although I didn't start to understand and accept what I needed to do until the age of sort of 26, 27 years old, when I look back at that little girl and everything that I went through, and all the anxieties and all the feelings of uncomfortable and lack of belonging and all of these things that I struggled with, I definitely knew from the age of like 4 or 5. I
mm,
just didn't have the vocabulary to verbalize how I was feeling. There wasn't the representation that there is today. There wasn't the knowledge, and I didn't know that this was even possible until I was 26. And I literally remember typing into YouTube, "Can you change from a woman to a man?" After
mm,
intrusive thoughts over the years and mental health struggles, and confidence issues, and that lack of belonging, that not knowing where you fit within yourself and within society, and this battle with gender identity, and how do I want to dress, how do I want to be, how do I want to behave, and all these things that I look at now and absolutely know that that's what I was struggling with.
Mm.
But like I said, at the time, that wasn't a thing, and that the education wasn't there. But it's amazing. It's amazing what hindsight teaches you.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So I definitely knew there was something. I didn't know it was gender, but I definitely knew there was something.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Because you hear all the, the naysayers and the negativity, on social media usually and various places. And it's almost a flippant, they assume it's a flippant, oh, I just fancy being a woman or a man, or, I just fancy changing, and it's something. But what they don't understand is the absolute, root foundation
Yeah.
of, the
Oh
feelings,
God. Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
and all those things that you must have gone through. I mean, we talk on this podcast about hope. There must have been times, up to the age of 26, perhaps even beyond, where you must have felt quite hopeless, that there wasn't much
Oh,
hope.
definitely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think anyone who struggles with mental health in general can feel like that. I definitely did at times. I remember reaching a point like that at sort of the age of 18. Trying to be this teenager. This woman, this
Mm,
person who goes out with the mates and has really long hair and goes and wears a dress and tall heels, and portrays that she's having the time of her life. And I was really desperate to be happy. um, and that mental health started to sort of take a nosedive.
mm,
And we as a family just thought that I was someone who worried a lot, who was just quite anxious, who just panicked about, like, my friendship groups or this and that. And I did reach a point where I was like, I'm going absolutely crazy here, joining the military was something that saved me at that point.
right. Mm,
Because I'd always been this tomboy, and being into sport and all these things. And as soon as I joined the military, I was like suddenly surrounded by, you know, this sort of this teamwork ethic, and this we're
mm,
all wearing the same thing, and this uniform that made me stand tall and proud. And I started to question my sexuality, and I was suddenly surrounded by all these gay women who were so confident and
mm,
owned who they were, and they were playing rugby, and they were like me, and they didn't dress like men, but they weren't really girly, and they were just themselves, and they owned it. And that was the first sort of little bit of that feeling of belonging for me.
yeah,
That's something that made me go, oh, this is who I am. This is all right.
right.
This is what I'm doing. And joining the military like that made me and my family think, oh, we've cracked it here.
Yeah.
Jess at the time, she just needed to be mentally and physically stimulated 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah.
And which I probably think is still the case. But yeah, that definitely saved me for a long time, and something that I have so much pride and respect for being a part of. And if I hadn't have been going through what I was going through, I'd probably still be in. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but yeah, it definitely was a saving grace for me at that time.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. So you joined the military. At what point then did you think, oh, perhaps this isn't the answer, this isn't what was wrong, and I haven't sort of mended, for want of a better word. I still feel not right.
Well, basically, I was part of a tactical unit, and we flew all over the world, guarding military planes and everything on it. And so it was fantastic. Like, it was so busy.
Mm,
We went to the best place in the world, the worst place in the world. We'd go somewhere for 20 minutes, we'd go somewhere for 2 weeks. Like, it was constantly on the move. Not I was never back on camp in my room for more than 2 days at a time. Like, I was always on the go. And so that, like, really suited me.
right.
And it was only when I started to play more rugby that they sort of, when they put a lot into you, to your playing sport within the military. And so the more I started to play, the more they wanted me to, play civilian rugby and build that up, and then you can achieve higher levels and all this sort of stuff. And so because I was started playing on this semi-pro team, they posted me away from that role to enable me to play more rugby. And so I was like, oh, well, this is great. I could just play sport, whatever.
Yeah.
But what happened was, in reality, I was only playing club rugby 2 evenings a week. My job was still, every day. And because I got posted into an intelligence role, I was suddenly behind a desk. And what I quickly started to realize was I'd never actually sat with Jess. I'd never actually sat with myself. I'd always just filled this void. I'll buy a car, I'll buy a house, I'll do this, I'll do that, whatever it is. I'm filling this, I'm distracting this, and I'm not sitting with it. And obviously, still at the time, I was only probably 23. I didn't know that it was anything to do with my gender. I just thought my mental health was just not very stable, and I started to become very depressed very quick. Like on the phone to my mum, crying all the time, and like just wanting to go home. And there's this like strange, like, what's happening to me? Why am I going back like this? I've had like 4 amazing years. What's happening? And at the time, I got sent on tour, which was good for like me mentally. But whilst I was away, I made the decision to put my notice in, because I knew there was something wasn't right, and I didn't want to go back to that job. And obviously, when you put your notice in the military, you have to give a year's notice.
Oh wow, gosh.
So you put it in, and then obviously you've got a year left to do. And so I put it in while I was away, and when I got home, obviously your head's a bit wobbly anyway after being in a different kind of environment. But I just didn't leave my mum's side for like 2 months. I couldn't look at anybody. I couldn't cope with anyone looking at me. I couldn't stop crying. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just remember sitting in my bedroom on the floor, just like crying and proper sobbing and not knowing why. And, my mum was a hairdresser. Like, I literally went everywhere with her, like to everyone's house while she cut their hair. And I was just terrified of leaving her. And I ended up staying off sick for a while and not going back. And then, obviously, whilst I'd been away and put my notice in, I'd applied to the prison service. Right. And so what happened was I got offered a job in the prison service, and they won't obviously prevent you from moving into a new career. So it got me out a little bit quicker. And I basically just swapped one uniform for another and distracted myself in a whole other way. And so I sort of transitioned out of the military and into the prison service at 24 years old. And it was the perfect in between for me, because I was like, I could live at home, but I was in a service, and I was, it was this good in between, and had a military background, which gave me a bit of a backbone as a female officer, dealing with all these men. And I loved it. And it was all these new people and, new challenges, and it was different every day. And you're absolutely everything to prisoners, like mum, dad, therapist, nurse, policeman, punch bag, shoulder to cry on, like, therapist, everything. And so that sort of took me, and I was like sorted again. And I must have got another 2 years. And then I remember having, actually, I forgot to say something. So when I came home and I didn't leave my mum for a while, I remember sitting down with her and asking her, is it because I want to be a boy? Oh. Is that why I'm so depressed? Is that what's wrong with me? And I only started to think about this because as a kid, I would struggle with like shopping for girls' clothes, or, I would always get called a man, like as a kid or as an adult. As an adult, I used to get shouted at in women's toilets, even, in a dress and how I used to look. And And I thought I looked like a man, but I look back now and I absolutely didn't.
You
Like,
didn't? No, no, I've seen the photos. You absolutely didn't.
you know, there must have been some sort of energy there, because from being a child to growing up, I always got the insult, "You're a man, you look like a bloke." You know, random people coming up to me in pubs, "Are you a bloke?" Like, just awful things. The things
Yeah.
that used to break my heart at the time.
Mm.
Um, and so when I started thinking about this, I asked my mum this question. I was like, is that what's wrong with me? And she was like, "No, like, of course not. You know, you're this beautiful athletic woman. You know, you wouldn't be you if you weren't Jess. Like, everyone loves who you are." And she used to call me Miss Congeniality. She's like, you're you. You know, you if you weren't a woman, you wouldn't be you. You wouldn't be all of these things. And so that's kind of what we both believed in that moment. And my mum says to me now, you know, if she'd have turned around and said, "Yes, Jess, you know, you should have been a boy,"
Mm.
and I'd have thought, right, okay, my mum says it's okay, and done it, and then it would have been the wrong decision, she would never forgive herself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It had to come from me. It had to, you know, and so I sort of, there was certain little seeds planted in my mum's mind, but nothing that made her think you know, Jess would actually reach that point. And so we kind of just buried it.
Mm.
It was like, dealt with that, right? That's fine. That's not the thing. And then obviously I did like 2 years in the prison service, and I ended up just having this conversation one day about mental health. And I just remember saying, "Oh, you know, yeah, I used to struggle with my mental health. I used to think I wanted to be a boy." And
Mm.
just said it, like, really blasé, like, not even thought about it. And from that moment, it just stuck.
Yeah.
It just stuck at the forefront of my mind. And it was like the universe had been saying to me, "You're going to have to deal with this at some point," just knocking on the door. And I remember going home that night, and I remember searching into YouTube, "Can you change from a girl to a boy?" And I just fell into this YouTube hole of like all these trans men, and they were like documenting the journey, and they changed their bodies, and they were being models, and they were doing all these things. And I knew instantly, I was like, "That's who I am." But at the same time, I was like, right, okay, that's fantastic that exists, but there's not a chance in hell I can do that.
Mm.
Like, I can't do that in Wigan, for one. I can't do that to my family, and I certainly can't do that in a prison.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to live happy that exists, and crack on,
Yeah.
and just know that exists, and that's okay. And the more I started to like think about this and look into my childhood, and figure out what was going on with me, I realized that from being probably 5 or 6 to probably when I joined the military at 19, 20, I had these sort of like, they were like intrusive thoughts, but they're more like prayers, they're more like worries.
Mm.
And I used to say in my head all the time these 4 little things, and I would like say it loads of times before I went to sleep, or you know, it'd be going round and round in my head through the day, and I
Mm.
wouldn't even think about it. It was just this subconscious thing. And I used to say, "Please don't anything bad happen. I would never change anything. Please everything be okay. And I love being a girl."
Oh. Mm.
And I just thought that was because I was worrying. But when I started to look at it, I was like, "Oh my God, you've just spent 20 years trying to convince yourself you was happy being a girl." Like, and I think the panic in me was that I knew deep down who I was, but obviously, you know, didn't have the vocabulary to verbalize that. But
Mm.
the worry, I think, was the fact that I loved who I was.
Yeah.
And I didn't want my soul to change. I didn't want anything to change around me. Like, I loved my life. I loved my family. I loved who I was.
Mm.
But something in me knew, you're not a
Yeah.
girl. But
Yeah. Yeah.
because I didn't want anything else to change, I think that was the panic. That was I love being a girl. I love being a girl. Don't change anything, because if I change that, then I lose everything else. And it was
Yeah.
like this anxious thing, I think.
Was it like the fear of the people that you love rejecting you? Was that part of it, or were you secure that they wouldn't?
So obviously, the more I looked into this, the more I started, you know, living in this YouTube world. What I didn't realize was, over the next sort of 6 to 12 months, I started to become more and more angry with the world.
Right.
I didn't know this was happening. I was sort of burying it and just trying to keep going. But the more I was starting to accept and understand and know that that's what I needed to do, the more fuming I was becoming with everything else. And when you work in a prison, it's very easy to use that as your outlet for anger. It's very easy to start an argument. It's very easy to kick off. It's very easy to take your bad mood out on someone else. And, prisoners give you an excuse to go off, constantly throughout the day. So I started to become a prison officer that I wasn't. And, I was putting myself in extremely dangerous situations. And when I look at that behavior now, it was suicidal behavior, because I just didn't care. Like, I was in situations arguing with prisoners over stupid things, that was hidden away from, anyone else. And I could have been getting seriously hurt, but I don't think I cared at the time. And I got pulled in by one of my governors, who you would have heard me talk about this, the big person, who said to me, so we've had like some complaints from staff and prisoners about you, and this one complaint said, and it was off this prisoner who was twice my size at the time, the ratio from prisoner to officer is 1 to 40. So there's like 4 of you to 200 men.
Wow.
To man that wing. And so she said this prisoner had put a complaint in saying, if I could choose between being in a shark tank with a shark or being on the landing with Miss Feeley, I'd pick the shark tank every time. And she's reading this to me, and I'm like, you what? Like, are you serious? Like, I'm one woman, and you think I'm terrorizing like 99 men? Like, and I just immediately went on the defensive and was so angry and offended. And I was probably ashamed. I was proud of the officer that I was, and that it hurt me, I think, thinking that was how I was being portrayed or coming across. And I stormed out the office and, sort of kicked up a big fuss. And the moment I got back to the wing, I just broke down crying. And I knew then, I knew I couldn't be Jess anymore. I knew that I couldn't do it. I'd tried everything to be Jess, and I was 27 years old. I'd tried absolutely everything, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And I knew at that point that, well, I'm either going to do this or I die. Oh, wow. It's one of those choices now.
Yeah, crunch time. Absolutely. Yeah.
So
how was your, bring it back to the hope thing? Was it a hopeful in that I know what I've got to do and I want to do it, or was it, oh, this is hopeless, I'm not sure what's going to happen, I don't know what the outcome's going to be, and you must have been quite terrified by this.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a mixture of both, to be honest with you. I think every decision I made from that point was do this or die. And that was my decision process for 12 months onwards, with everything that I did. And so in a sense, it was hopeless, but in another way, I had always believed so strongly that when it feels scary to jump, that's when you jump. Otherwise, you stay in the same place your entire life. And I'd always been so passionate about that and so motivated to succeed and fulfill my potential. And, I didn't want to die. Like, I wanted to live. Like, I loved my life. I loved who I was. I just wasn't very happy. And it was this battle all the time. And so the more I thought about that, the more I was like, actually, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it properly, and I'm going to do it with everything that I've got. And I'm going to try and change mindsets in the process. And, I was terrified to tell my parents and figure this out. And, I didn't know anything about this before I had to embark on it. So I couldn't expect anyone else to have a clue. And it's a terrifying process, and it's not something that can happen quickly. And it costs a lot of money. And obviously, when I did decide this, at first I thought, well, there's not a chance I can stay in the prison. Like, I'm either going to die or I'm going to transition. So none of those options allow me to be in a prison. And then again, I just came back to like my core value of doing what terrifies you. And I was like, no, I'm doing it. If I'm doing it, I'm doing it. So we do it. Like, if I'm saying I do it or I die, well then, I tell my mum and dad, or I'm not here anymore. I go back to work, or I'm not here anymore. I face that, or I face the judgment, I'm not here anymore. I have the conversations, or I'm not here anymore. I be patient, and I enjoy the journey, and I figure out how it works, and I figure out how to do it, and I figure out how to be happy every day, because I'm becoming more and more Jax every single day. If I'm not doing that, I'm not here anymore. And that, I think that's how I got through it, to be honest with you. I look back now and I think, how the fuck did you do that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I look back, because I just looked the same. I walked back into the prison as Miss Feeley with a shaved head. Wow. And I was like, I'm Mr. Feeley now. Like, so dangerous. And, and my family were terrified and hurting and worried, and had so much fear of me walking into the world like that. And even more so, obviously, going back to the prison, and it was really hard. But I was so passionate about taking everyone on that journey with me. And, it doesn't just affect me, it affects everyone around me. It's, when you go through something, as you'll know, whatever you're going through affects everyone around you as well. And
absolutely,
you've got to try and understand how you're feeling and how I'm feeling, and you've got to understand how I'm feeling, and I've got to understand how you're feeling, and tried to really go into it with that, and show my mum and dad, that it was a dead daughter or a living son. Like, that is the point that I'm at. And slowly but surely, they started to see the light come back in their child's eyes, and they started to realize that that was the absolute right decision. And every day I got a little bit happier, and every day, and I was trying to educate them as well as other people, and, started doing these podcasts, and, talking to prisoners, and doing all these things, and trying to tell them that this is the impact it has. This person's messaged me about their child who's in hospital after trying to take their own life, and they watched my podcast, so they watched this, and this is why visibility matters. And it started to help my mum be able to navigate conversations with other people. And it was just a massive journey, and don't get me wrong, I'm still on it, and I will be forever. But it was about just having those really uncomfortable conversations over and over and over again, until something comes through it. The same with prisoners, like just showing that vulnerability, and showing that you have to do the hard things if you want to change your life. You have to look in the mirror. You have to face your own trauma. You have to have these uncomfortable conversations. You have to embrace every scar that you've got, because it got you to where you are today. And it started to give the most hopeless of men, 20 years in, the courage that it's never too late to change your own life.
Wow. I mean, you must have, I mean, you talked about sort of taking the prisoners and the prison service sort of with you on your journey, if you like. I mean, that in itself, I can't imagine that the strength you had to summon up to do that. I mean, eye-watering, but you obviously did it because you had such a passion as to, this is right, this is what I need, and this is, and it's true, isn't it, that whatever you tackle in life, if you've got the reason and the why really determined behind it, anything is possible, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You pass that message onto the prisoners as well. I mean, how did they all? I mean, their initial reaction must have been, "Oh, hang on a minute," mustn't it? I mean, it must have been quite.
Yeah. So I worked on a specialised unit at the time called Psychologically Informed Plan Environment, and so it caters to prisoners with elements of personality disorder, struggle to understand, their own mindset, why they behave the way they do, manage the relationships, maintain their emotions, all these things. And so we did a lot of sort of like intimate groups with them, rather than you would on a big wing. And so obviously when I went back in and sort of just sat down and just started to tell them, they'd known, this female officer for 3 years before, I think they could see this massive vulnerability and this massive, they were looking at me thinking, you would never do that. You would never do that as an officer. Like, you would never show that much of yourself, because it puts you in a dangerous situation. they knew how terrifying that would be, and so they were like, well, if you can come back in here and help us with our stuff whilst going through your own stuff. And don't get me wrong, it took a while, and I was really open to anyone's questions, staff as well. Like, I wanted people to know that it was okay to make mistakes. I was Jess before, I'm Jax now, but at the end of the day, I still wanted to be Feely, because you're very much a last named person in a job like that.
Yeah.
And I still wanted to be able to have a laugh and take the mick. And what I found more than anything was, if you can allow yourself and the people closest to you to take the mickey out of your biggest insecurities, nothing in this world can touch you. I was shouting at prisoners and my voice was dropping, over that first 12 months, and hitting the roof and coming back, and I'm laughing at it, and and I'm letting them ask me questions. And I think it was just a really slow process of it helped me by helping them. And the impact, I never expected the impact, and don't get me wrong, there was abuse and there was different things from different people, but the majority of them, especially the ones on that unit who saw me every day, they had so much respect for what I was doing. Even after like restraining them or fighting with them, they'd come up to me afterwards and be like, but it weren't because of the trans thing, don't you? Like, I might think you're an arsehole, but it's not because of the trans thing. And because they had that, they knew how frightening it was, and they related to being suicidal, they related to self-harm, they related to mental health, they related to, struggling to accept who you are, or being unapologetically yourself, and, all these things. It must have just hit this human side of them, because everything is stripped back in prison. You are a human being, and we are all transitioning all the time, whether that's, leaving prison, leaving the military, changing gender, going through an illness, it's getting a divorce, moving job, moving country, whatever it is. We're all trying to constantly adapt to these changes in our life that terrify us the most, and they play with our identity, and they carry so much elements of grief, and you always have to try and learn how to let go of a little bit of yourself to make room for the new bit. And this constant madness, as human beings, that's what makes me so passionate to talk about this, because it's never been about the gender for me. Like, it's about life.
It's amazing. I mean, we can go on now. It's a great segue into what you're doing now, really. I introduced you at the beginning, all these, I found them on your website. Actually, it's a fabulous website. I'll put the link in to the but it's just incredible what you're doing, what you are actually doing, and what you've got the word advocate on your Insta page, and that sort of, you speak for people that perhaps aren't able to speak for themselves. I've seen so many posts and things from you, particularly, after recent events, which must be utterly disheartening for you. Utterly.
Yeah, it's I mean, thank you, like, for your kind words. Half the time I don't think I'm doing anything.
You are.
I really struggle with not being prison officer anymore, and not having that place to go to every day, and that feeling of being in a uniform after doing it for 10 years, and not having anyone else's stuff to deal with. It's just me every day trying to build something, whatever that is. And so I really struggle with that, and sort of knowing if I'm on the right track, knowing if I'm getting anywhere, knowing where this is leading me. But I am passionate about helping people not give up, and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And I just try and have the conversations that I think need to be had, and I try to have them in a way that hits people's emotion and make them feel like it can relate to their life, or whether it's about being trans or not, or the fact that it could affect someone they love. And I think what's really frightening about what has happened recently with the Supreme Court ruling is, our identities and our rights are so fragile, and people in society think we've come so far, and we have, but they have been taken way back, into a really dangerous place.
Yeah.
Which I think, is so important to get out there. I keep feeling the need to apologize for posting so much about it,
Mm.
but at the same time, I can't not,
Mm.
because there's such a lack of understanding and a lack of knowledge out there
Yeah.
about what this means. And people have been fed this narrative to make them fear trans people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in effect, the majority of people have never met anyone trans. If they have, they probably haven't even known, or if they have, they've certainly not been afraid of them. It's 0.5% less of the population, and it's really frightening that you can take away something like the toilet or a single sex space. If someone can't go to the toilet without providing ID, they effectively can't live a normal life. They can't go out the house. They can't get a job. They can't do all these basic human things, because if you're pulling that right away from someone, trans women are definitely not going to go in the men's toilet, because that's incredibly dangerous.
Mm.
And, even more masculine presenting or butch women are getting shouted at in toilet. I used to get shouted at, like, it's really dangerous, and it affects everyone, and especially all women. It puts all women at risk.
Absolutely. It sort of strikes me as quite sort of Handmaid's Tale, in that a woman has to look like a woman.
Well, exactly, exactly,
anyone who doesn't, even a cis woman who says you say is bit built, short hair, they're going to be questioned. They're going to be, what you doing?
Exactly, and it's frightening, and and that's what it is. It's a step towards controlling women, and what, do you look woman enough to be in this space? And like, my sister is an absolute model, but she's 5'11". She's tall. Is she now gonna, are people gonna have certain, and or like I said, more masculine presenting women? But what people also don't realize is, it allows, if the argument that they say it is that men are dressing up as women to go into toilets, which isn't happening. Number one, that's not trans women, that's men. But number two, if you force trans women out of women's spaces, you force trans men into them. And so, by this guidance, I should now go in the female toilet, which I don't think people would be very happy with now, and would probably feel very threatened by if I walked in.
Until you say hello, because you're lovely, Jaxon. But
but looking at me,
but
man,
absolutely,
on his neck, like,
any woman who's had a negative experience.
And what makes that more dangerous is, men don't have to dress up as women now. They can just pretend they're trans men and walk in, and you can't police that. And so, after so many people bringing that to attention, they've now released another bit of guidelines that says, but under certain circumstances, trans men can't go in the women's either. So, effectively saying to me, well, you just can't go to the toilet.
There you go.
The disabled ones are always locked, and you can't go in the others. So you can't go and people just don't understand how it's impacting. My inbox is filled with people panicking and being suicidal, and all this stuff, and it's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
It must take such an emotional toll on you to read all those, messages, and because there's only so much you can do to help, isn't there? There's only so much, and you sometimes you must, I don't know, do you feel a bit powerless, or do you feel that actually you can, that there is obviously a lot you are doing at the moment.
I think you do. I think it does make me feel really helpless. I feel a need to try and do something, and haven't really been able to think of anything else over the last couple of weeks. But I think it's definitely taken its toll. Like, I do feel mentally exhausted, and it's making me feel really lazy, because I feel like I've not done anything else, apart from think about that. And so it's making me feel like I'm, big. So I'm like, why am I so tired? I haven't done anything. And then
But as you said, it's all to do with people not understanding, and
Mm,
your role very much. I mean, on social media, I've seen you are aiming to educate. You are trying to
mm.
tell people what it's about, and that is such an important thing. Don't underestimate that, because people are reading that, people who perhaps haven't got experience or are perhaps swaying one way, and they read your
Yeah,
post and think, oh, hang on, no, he's got something there. So
yeah.
keep doing that, for goodness sake, because that will
Thank you.
that will go out into the
Yeah,
world, and
yeah. We've just got to keep banging the drum. My
yeah,
mum came home the other day and was like, I was telling this woman what you were saying, and I could see I could see the
yeah,
clogs turning, and she got emotional. And she was like, "Oh my God, he's right."
yeah,
And I,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm like so proud of my mum for trying to change mindsets like that,
yeah,
and make women realize that this is dangerous for everyone.
yeah, yeah.
Um, just yeah, it's really heavy and it's really sad,
It is.
and it
It's
just makes you want to riot. But we'll
cool.
see.
Organize that.
We'll see.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, it's been so fabulous talking to you, Jackson. It really has. The time has gone on. But I always ask my guests, I think you've sort of answered it already, but I always ask my guests what your message of hope might be for them.
I think what I've found is there's a lot of hope in learning how to enjoy the journey.
Mhm.
I think we all want, what we want now. And when we get it, that's not where the happiness is. You know, it's all about the 1% in your daily life that
Oh,
make you really happy. And,
mm.
if you can become a little bit more like the person you want to become every day and enjoy that while it happens, you will become so much happier. I had to get excited about each little chin hair I got, and a little bit of a deeper voice, or all
Yeah.
these things, because if you go straight to the top of the mountain, you miss the climb.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Better to
that
travel
that's what
hopefully, my dad says. Yeah. Better to
yeah,
travel hopefully than to arrive, he says. And I think that's so
yeah,
true.
like,
Yeah.
that's what it's about. It's about enjoying the journey, and those one little bit, those 1% in your everyday life,
Wonderful.
there's and that will give you so much hope.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. Now, if my listeners are thinking, oh, I need to get in touch with Jackson, I need to find out more. I will put all the links in the notes, but just tell us how people can connect with you and where.
I'm Jaxon Feeley on everything, so you can find me there. Obviously my website, jacksonfeeley.com. But yeah, if you search me, you'll find me somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been banging the drum for a few years now, so I'm not going anywhere.
Wonderful, wonderful. And just very quickly, what's the future? What's the next steps for you, Jackson?
You know what? I have no bloody idea. We'll start to see what happens. If they carry on, I'm leaving the country.
Oh
So,
no, don't do that.
um, I don't know. The big aim has always been to be regularly on mainstream television, in mainstream media, regularly on screen, to be that positive representation for, proving
Yeah.
that you can do anything you want to, and you can live true to you, and nothing will
Mm,
stop you if you set your mind to it. So, representation and visibility is what reassures people that their life's worth living. And so people need to see a physical manifestation of them.
mm.
And so that's the big aim. How we get there, we're still going. So we get
Work in progress.
1%, 1%.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been just a pleasure talking to you today, Jackson. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Chronicles of Hope podcast with me, Annie Bennett. I hope you found inspiration, comfort, or perhaps even a newfound perspective around the meaning of hope. To find out more about the aims of the Chronicles of Hope organisation, please visit thechroniclesofhope.org, where you will find links to our social media accounts and where you will be able to make a much needed and appreciated donation. Thank you.